with some of my preparation and reading, someone at one point asked John Wesley, if you knew God was coming tomorrow, or Jesus was returning tomorrow, what would you do tonight? And he said, go home, go to bed, get up tomorrow and look forward to it. I'm not sure that all of us would feel the same way. So our parable today is about being prepared. One of the things that might help us understand this parable is knowing that at this time, the Jewish custom was when you had a son or a daughter, as they were growing up, you looked around and found another family who had values that were similar and that you would like your family to be joined with, and you would arrange that when they were of age, that your daughter or son would marry this other child. And then the family raised that child up. Oftentimes the boys learned a trade from their father. They became independent. They built a house. And then at that time, when things were ready, he would go to the bride's family and claim his bride, take her to his family. They would have a wedding ceremony and a supper. And that was just family. And then after that was done, they would have a whole community celebration together. And during that community celebration, there would be this torch dance where the girls, 10 girls danced until their torches went out. So that kind of is the background for this parable. Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 through 13. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. The 5 who were foolish didn't take enough olive oil for their lamps, but the other 5 were wise enough to take along extra oil. When the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, they were aroused by the shout, "Look, the bridegroom is coming. Come out and meet him." All of the bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. When the 5 foolish ones asked the others, "Please give us some of your oil because our lamps are going out." But the others replied, "We don't have enough for all of us. Go to a shop and buy some for yourselves." But while they were gone to buy oil, the bridegroom came. When those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside, calling, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he called back, "Believe me, I don't know you. So you too must keep watch, for you do not know the day or hour of my return." The word of God.
Thank you, Beverly. So I mentioned this before, but reading a novel, you get so engaged with the characters. At the end of the novel, you feel like you've lost a friend when you have to close the pages of that novel, that book. For the past several months, we've been following through the book of Genesis. So we've looked at the story of creation. We talked a little bit about Abraham, and then we moved to Joseph, and then on to Moses, and spent some time with Moses and the people wandering in the desert. Think about a trial, think about difficulties wandering in the desert, and then experiencing the escape from Egypt, and then being on the cusp of going into the promised land. Moses was unable to share in that experience, but Joshua was able to lead the people into the promised land. And Joshua, being a great leader, was able to claim some of that land for God's people. Most of the book of Joshua describes that process. So now we're into the end of the book of Joshua, the end of Joshua's life, the end of that series of biblical stories. I'm sad to leave them, but Joshua leaves us with some wonderful words that should be able to give us courage as we move forward starts with chapter 24, but I want to read some of chapter 23, which are Joshua's final words. So Joshua knows that he is dying, and he says to the people gathered before him, I am now a very old man. You have seen everything the Lord your God has done for you during my lifetime. You have seen everything that the Lord your God has done for you. The Lord your God has fought for you against your enemies. And then he goes on to describe the conquering of the nations from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. You people have seen what God is capable of doing through a faithful people. So be very careful to follow everything Moses wrote in the book of instruction. Do not deviate from it, turning either to the right or to the left. Make sure you do not associate with the other people still remaining in the land. Do not even mention the names of their gods, much less swear by them or serve them or worship them. Rather, cling tightly to the Lord your God as you have done until now. But if you turn away from him and cling to the customs of the survivors of these nations remaining among you, then you will know for certain that the Lord your God will no longer drive them out of your land. Instead, they will be a trap for you. Soon I will die, going the way of everything on earth. Deep in your hearts, you know that every promise of the Lord your God has come true. Not a single one has failed. But as surely as the Lord your God has given you the good things he promised, he will also bring disaster on you if you obey him. If you break the covenant of the Lord your God by worshiping and serving other gods, his anger will burn against you, and you will quickly vanish from the good land he has given you. And in our reading for today, the last words of Joshua. He gathers the people before him, the tribes of Israel, including their elders, leaders, judges, and officers. So they came and presented themselves to God. Joshua said to the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River, and they worshipped other gods. But I took your ancestor Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him into the land of Canaan. So fear the Lord and serve him wholeheartedly. Put away forever the idols your ancestors worshipped when they lived beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt. Serve the Lord alone. But if you refuse to serve the Lord, then choose today whom you will serve. Would you prefer the gods your ancestors served beyond Euphrates? Or will it be the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live now? But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord." The people replied, "We would never abandon the Lord and serve other gods, for the Lord our God is the one who rescued us and our ancestors from slavery in the land of Egypt. He performed mighty miracles before our eyes. As we traveled through the wilderness among our enemies, he preserved us. It was the Lord who drove out the Amorites and the other nations living here in the land. So we too will serve the Lord, for he alone is our God." Then Joshua warned the people, "You are not able to serve the Lord, for he is a holy and jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. If you abandon the Lord and serve other gods, he will turn against you and destroy you, even though he has been so good to you? But the people answered Joshua, no, we will serve the Lord. You are witnesses to your own decision, Joshua said. You have chosen to serve the Lord. Yes, they replied, we are witnesses to what we have said. All right then, Joshua said, destroy the idols among you and turn your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. The people again said to Joshua, we will serve the Lord our God. We will obey him alone. So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day at session, committing them to follow the decrees and regulations of the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. Wonderful words for us to hear at this time. There are, in the Greek, two words for time: chronos, which is regular time, and kairos, time. A time of significant change. A time when things seem to be turning. A time when God's hand must be felt. Joshua is reminding the people that this was a kairos time. You can live in your chronos time, he is saying, or you can make a choice, and at this moment, in that choice, begin to live in God's time. This is a kairos moment. This is a choice that you as God's people can make. As for me and my family, we will make a commitment to follow the Lord. And he looked around all those people and said, what is your choice? And of course, they all said, we will follow the Lord too. We will be faithful. But remember, your God is a jealous God. Your decisions will have consequences. Your actions, the choice that you make in the gods you will worship, will have consequences. Make a choice today. Now, this is a kairos time. Joshua is asking God's people, will you remember? Will you remember the stories that have been passed on to you? The stories about God's goodness and God's greatness? The power of God to bring you through difficult times. Will you remember? Or will you fall into that dangerous pattern of being too comfortable, thinking you can do it all on your own? Will you become complacent and distant from your history? We've heard the stories. Our forebears passed on those stories to us. We have this book that tells all those stories. We were the future that they were talking to. We are now the bearers of those stories. We are the bearers of the faith story. You see, we too are at a kairos moment. We too must make a choice. The people said, we will serve the Lord. Joshua said, you be a witness to this. You be a witness to this. And they said, we are witnesses to what we have said. What does the record show? Did they remain faithful? they did not. God's people ended up in exile. A pandemic, political strife, disagreements among people, families, paralysis, forgetting what is true and what is good. What story will your children and their children and their children's children hear from us? We are creating the future today. Will our children and their children's children hear the stories of our faith? Will they know for certain by the way we act that when we said we will serve the Lord this day, that it became so? What stories will we pass on to our children as we go through this very difficult time? Let there be no mistake. This is a difficult time. What will our children learn from us? The young man's suicide that we heard about this morning is just one of many, friends. Due in no small part to the anxieties, the disagreements and anger that they see reflected in those who call themselves adults. And even more sadly, those who call themselves disciples of Jesus Christ. What stories will our children learn from us? Friends, we can do and need to do better. Even, or maybe because of, or maybe in spite of these difficult times. Today we too have to make a choice. Will we choose to follow God and all that God teaches us and asks for and of us? Or will we be like everyone else who raises their hands and says, I believe, but act as if it were not so? How will you prepare for the future today? God's kingdom is here today. Let's be clear about that. God's kingdom is here today because of Jesus the Christ. It is not completely fulfilled, friends, so well we know. But God's kingdom is here today. And it will be more so tomorrow if we make the right choices. Which of the bridesmaids will you be as we await for the fulfillment of the kingdom, the coming again of Jesus Christ? I don't know when that's going to happen. If you do, let me know. But I do know one thing, that in the meantime, I have a choice to make. That choice is up to me. This is a Kairos moment for us, friends. The bridesmaids who were not prepared said, let me in, let me in, let me in. And Jesus said, believe me, I don't know you. Does that stick you in the heart? Would you want to hear those words from your Creator God? Believe me, I don't know you. Your choice has eternal consequences. In the 7th chapter of Matthew, Jesus says, "Many will call me on me, Lord, Lord. But only those who actually do," let me say that again, only those who actually do my will enter the kingdom of heaven. So friends, we have a moment. We have a time. Here, now. To make a choice as we await for the coming of God's fullness in the kingdom. When all peoples will gather together at the foot of the mountain, and all of God's people will go up to that mountain to worship at the foot of our God. That's what we're waiting for. That's what we're preparing for today and now. You might say, well, I don't know when God is coming. That would be true. But I'm here to tell you today that Jesus comes when any one of his people gives food to the hungry. Jesus Christ comes when any one of his people give water to the thirsty. Jesus Christ comes when any one of his people give clothing to the naked. Jesus Christ comes when any one of God's people visit the sick. Jesus Christ comes when any one of God's people free the oppressed. We can make the coming of Jesus Christ a reality through what we do. It's our choice. Jesus said to Peter, "Do you love me?" And Peter said, "Of course I do." "Do you love me, Peter?" "Of course I do." "Do you love me, Peter?" "Yes, Lord, I love you." "Then feed my sheep." Pretty simple, right? So what do we do while we're waiting? Make the right choice. And feed all of God's children. Right? It's up to you. It's up to you. Make a choice. As for me and my family, we will follow.